First of all, we'd like to say we want to free all marijuana prisoners and stop any more from going in. That's very important. You people should get involved in that. And now we want to, for those of you who've been following the saga of Joe and Jay and Joe and Paula, we were arrested in 2011, and the police came in our house without a warrant. The police officer stated that he smelt marijuana, and then he also lied and said that the marijuana was in plain view, which we will show later on this video that that's not true. And then we went to court and in Saugerties, and the judge had signed a warrant after the fact, which was illegal, and we told the judge that he now became complicit in the crimes against us. And originally, that we were charged with felonies, me and Jay, and
Jay is Joe's son, for those who are first-time viewers.
Right, okay, my son Jay, yes. And originally we were charged with a felony, but in Kingston, where they already know us, and we've been through a thing with another criminal judge there, Donald Williams, we strung out a case for 2 years, and we wound up getting no jail time, no probation, no peeing in a bottle, and I don't think they wanted to deal with us again, so they did not indict us, so the felony should have been completely dropped. Then we went to, it was transferred to Saugerties Town Court. In Saugerties Town Court, the prosecutor said he was willing to drop the felony down to a misdemeanor and possession of 1 joint and a $100 fine, which we turned down. Then the judge said he was going to ACD it, that's adjourned contemplating dismissal, and we turned that down. And then the judge did his act for everybody in the courtroom because he didn't want to have all those people see that we were beating them. So he said, he slammed the gavel down, turned all red, and said, "Oh, in 30 days this is coming back to trial." Well, 30 days went by, and now here we are 4 years later, and we get this letter from Saugerties Court, and it says that, please be advised that the above captioned matter is scheduled for action on the above date and time and place. Please be present at that time. And the next date that they gave us after 4 years is 9/02/2015. That's
Wednesday. 2nd of February.
The 2nd of February.
Excuse me, September.
Yeah, I mean the 2nd of September, right.
2015.
2015. Now this is 4 years later, which is way past any statute of time limit that the prosecutor has to bring this to trial. And again, on this indictment, or on this ticket, that whatever it is, it says criminal possession of marijuana in the second, which is a felony. But they can't charge us with a felony 4 years later when it's never been indicted. So already this is bogus piece of paperwork. And then it also says unlicensed growing of cannabis. Now, if there's at the time of this here, no one in the state of New York had a license. So how, if the state wasn't licensing marijuana grows, how can you charge us with unlicensed grow? That's another bogus charge there. Now, when it comes to this, the police officer said that he smelt marijuana, and that was his excuse for breaking into our apartment. And I'd like to, here's a paper right here.
Here, I'll do it. Keep talking and explain what they're seeing.
Okay, this is a bill passed by the legislature. Go to the top of it, yeah, that.
Okay, I can get it in editing too.
Okay, now, it says, summary provisions. This is a bill that was passed by and put forward by Mr. Gottfried, enacts a new penal law act, marijuana offenses providing possession and sale of up to 25 grams of marijuana is a violation, legally not a crime, punishable by up to a $100 fine for the first offense. Escalating penalties for subsequent violations. Okay, but down the bottom it goes, this bill decriminalizes marijuana for personal use. The average citizen who merely uses a small quantity of marijuana for personal use at home or to share with friends would no longer fear arrest, jail, or a criminal record. So if marijuana was decriminalized for use in the home, how can this police officer use the smell of marijuana to force his way in without a warrant, which is bogus. They don't follow, the police don't follow the laws, the courts don't follow the laws, yet they hold us responsible, or they say we have to be responsible and we should know the law and we can be held accountable to a law that they choose to ignore whenever they feel like it. Now we're going to go into some of the criminality of what they've done against us.
Can I read the justification on that? That's kind of interesting.
Oh, you mean this part?
Yeah, this was Mr. Gottfried in 1974, right? Was it 76? Anyway, he goes, justification. This bill decriminalizes marijuana for personal use. The average citizen who merely uses a small quantity of marijuana for personal use at home or to share with friends would no longer fear arrest, jail, or a criminal record. Every year, thousands of our neighbors are arrested and prosecuted for simply possessing marijuana. Thousands of lives are scarred. Thousands of hours of police and court time are wasted. The cost to those arrested and their families and to the taxpayers is staggering. Yet the scientific evidence clearly shows no significant harm or no harm at all from marijuana use. And marijuana use has skyrocketed despite our present tough penalties. In Oregon and California, under bills similar to this, after 1 year, there was no significant increase in marijuana use.
And let me jump in again. Read this one more time about, here, let me read it. We want you to really pay attention to this, people. Every year, thousands of neighbors are arrested and prosecuted for simply possessing marijuana. Thousands of lives are scarred. Thousands of hours of police and court time are wasted. The cost of those arrested to their families and to the taxpayer is staggering. But here's the key line here. Yet the scientific evidence clearly shows no significant harm or no harm at all from marijuana use. If there's no significant harm or no harm at all, there should be no penalties for marijuana use. And marijuana use has skyrocketed despite our present tough penalties. So it's obvious that the laws against it don't work, and it's obvious that there should be no law. If scientific evidence clearly shows no significant harm and no harm at all, then why are there laws, and why are so many of our brothers and sisters sitting in jail for use, possession, or even sales of marijuana? That's from Gottlieb. Now we're going to go into...
In the early 70s.
Right. And that was... Is the date on this?
I was looking for the date. If I find the date, you keep going on. I'll look for the date.
Now, we want to go in further to show that everything these people do the police can act in a criminal manner. First of all, the police coming in without a warrant, that was criminal. That, violated our right to privacy, violated our right to be secure in our home and our effects, right? And also, Dirk Budd from the Ulster County Regional Task Force signed a statement, a sworn statement, and in that sworn statement, he states, on the aforementioned date and time at the above listed location, said defendant did knowingly and unlawfully cultivate and grow cannabis plants. And that's a sworn statement by Dirk Budd upon the defendant's residence. A chemical field test for possessed substance was positive for the presence of marijuana. THC. All contrary to the provisions of a statute in such case made and provided by law. Paul is going to read 6 here.
You don't want me to read the first part? You are hereby directed to search.
Okay, yeah.
Here's the search warrant under CPL 690.45. State of New York, County of Ulster, Town of Saugerties. Okay, boom, boom, boom. The state, the county, and the town. To any police officer of the Ulster Regional Gang Enforcement Narcotics Team, Kingston, New York, or the Ulster County Sheriff's Office, Kingston, New York. So you are hereby directed to search the residence, apartment, and property of occupied by Joseph Barton and J. Deberman, located at 1610 Glasgow Turnpike, Apartment C2, Town of Saugerties, County of Ulster, State of New York. You travel west on Route 212 in the town of Saugerties, approaching Glasgow Turnpike. You turn left or south onto Glasgow Turnpike. You then turn left or east and enter the apartment complex located at 1610 Glasgow Turnpike. The building containing the apartment to be searched is the second building on the right, Building C. The building is a brown wooden 2-story multifamily residential structure. Access to the apartment to be searched is gained ascending stairs located on the left or west side of the building. At the top of the stairs is a landing. Access to the apartment to be searched is gained by entering the white door on the right. The number 2 is clearly marked on the door frame next to the door. This is going to be interesting.
Okay, now, this warrant was made and applied for after they had already come in the house. Under our Constitution, the law says you're supposed to get a warrant before you search. So the fact that they get a warrant after the fact now made Judge
Lamb. Oh, Judge Lamb?
Judge Lamb
complicit
in the crimes against us. After the warrant, this should have been thrown out because they didn't have a warrant. But instead of throwing it out, which is what a judge is supposed to do, say, well, you didn't have a search warrant, it's no good. He gave him a warrant after the fact. Now, to add to that, when Dirk Budd applied for this warrant, and he signed and sworn to it again, go to 6.
On February 4th, 2011, Ulster County Sheriff's Office Deputy James Mullen responded to investigate an unauthorized use of a vehicle complaint. Deputy Mullen was dispatched to 1610 Glasgow Turnpike in the town of Saugerties. An apartment number was not provided. Deputy Mullen began knocking on doors at the apartment building in an attempt to locate Michael Bolletino in regard to the complaint.
Let me jump in on that for a second. After this all went down, we went around. Now, he said here, he went knocking on doors. We're the third building in. He went past 2 buildings, but we went after this and asked all the other apartments in that complex if the police had knocked on their door. And every one of them said no, the police had not knocked on their door. So that statement in itself right there is a lie. Go ahead.
Deputy Mullen knocked on the door of apartment C2. A male, later identified as J. Deberman, answered the door. Deputy Mullen immediately noticed a strong odor of marijuana emanating from the apartment. Deputy Mullen requested that Deberman step outside. Deberman attempted to shut the door abruptly, but the door was stopped by Deputy Mullen's shoe. Deputy Mullen observed marijuana plants inside the residence.
Let me jump in again. That's also a false statement, false and misleading statement. Jay stepped out, my son Jay stepped outside the apartment and talked with Deputy Mullen outside the apartment, who was saying he smelt marijuana and he wanted to come in. And Jay said to him, "Do you have a warrant?" He said no. He said he didn't need a warrant because he smelt marijuana. When Jay tried going back in the house is when Deputy Mullen put his shoe in the door to stop Jay from shutting the door. So that in itself, again, is a statement that's been sworn to that's a lie.
That contradicts the evidence.
And contradicts the evidence, right. Go ahead, read further.
Deverman then began to flail about in what Deputy Mullen described as a fake seizure.
I'm going to jump in again on that. My son did have a seizure. Both Michelle Rice and me were witnesses to it. I was holding my son up to keep him from collapsing to the floor at the time. And everything, this is a false statement being perpetrated upon the court by Dirk Budd.
Okay.
Go ahead.
A female then came to the door, and then Deputy Mullen observed another male, later identified as Joseph Barton, emerge from the apartment and then run back into a bedroom. Deputy Mullen then pursued Barton and secured him, as well as Deberman and the female, later identified as Michelle A. Rice. Upon securing the occupants, Deputy Mullen observed what appeared to be approximately 1 pound of marijuana in a plastic bag in plain view in the living room.
Again, this is a lie. The marijuana was not in the living room where what he says. The marijuana was found in my bedroom where there was a curtain hanging where he couldn't even see my bedroom, and a door to my bedroom beyond the curtain that was shut. So they just make it up so that they can convict people. They don't tell the truth. You know, none of this, there was no marijuana in plain sight, and we're going to play some tape later to prove everything that we're saying, that from the door the officer could not have seen the marijuana back in my bedroom, could not have seen marijuana plants. How many people who grow marijuana plants grow them so they're in plain sight? When you open the door, they can see them. Every marijuana grower in the country knows you do not grow marijuana where when you open the door, people can see it. This is, you know, fraudulent testimony on the part of both of these officers. Go ahead.
Do you want to go into the fact that being described as a marijuana trafficker is a label?
Right.
And when you harm no one and you...
Right. Also, yeah, no. On 7 it says, Barton and Deberman are known to this writer and urgent as marijuana traffickers. I have never been convicted, nor my son ever been convicted of trafficking marijuana. So for him to state that, he never bought any marijuana from me. He has no court records that say that that I was trafficking in marijuana. I've been arrested for possession of marijuana. I've been arrested for growing marijuana, but I've never been arrested for trafficking or selling marijuana. So he has no proof of the statements that he made here.
That's a demeaning statement, trafficking, because as Joe was pointing out, in the expensive marijuana licenses that have been given, what do you think the people are going to do once they have these licenses? They're there for a business, and they intend to sell their marijuana, right?
Right. Well, Paul is talking about now the medical marijuana law has now made it so fat cats, rich guys who have a lot of money and political connections and probably contributed to the campaigns of politicians, they now have licenses. So now they have licenses when they didn't have licenses at the time of all this. It's outrageous.
But are we going to call the Peckhams traffickers now? Even though, if you look at it,
Right.
that's what's happening. So you
Right.
see how terms are used. We often talk about being turned into a corporation, but even other than that, if you're using words that people don't understand or have a slanderous character to their nature, then that is, it's a type of hate crime, ultimately.
Yes.
Is what it is.
And it's to make people, they make up words like trafficking, just to make it sound like, oh, you broke the law. But even, is a farmer who grows corn trafficking in corn, do they say, oh, he's a corn trafficker? Or a farmer who grows watermelons, he's trafficking in watermelons? No, they don't say that. This is it's discriminatory is what it really is. It discriminates against marijuana farmers, It's all to make them look bad and all to make laws so that it sounds like they're some kind of criminal. Also, I would like to point out that this paperwork that we got 4 years later, now we're supposed to go back to court on these charges 4 years later, it's very truly yours, court clerk, and it's unsigned by any court clerk. So
Actually, I should show that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Keep talking.
So they sent us a paper to come to court and go to the bottom of it. All right. You see, very truly yours. Go over to this way. Yeah. Very truly yours, court clerk, right? Unsigned. So does an unsigned paper from the court have any validity to it or have any legal authority? I don't know, but I doubt it. Now, as far as we just read you the two statements that contradict each other. One, he says, we found the marijuana and we arrested Barton and Deberman. And then when he applied for the warrant, he's saying we need a warrant to find the marijuana. And
Shall I read that? No, that one. I never read that one.
well, I read this one, but you can read it again if you
Okay.
want.
This is called criminal information, and there's also a felony complaint. And in the felony complaint, it has to be signed by somebody, the complainant. But the complainant in this case is not actually a harmed party. This is a color of law way of having something signed by somebody who's following rules and regulations within a business corporate capacity. And that's why they call these officers complainants. Okay? Here under criminal information, I, D.R. Budd, the complainant, herein am a police officer of the state of New York.
You don't have to read it all. Just read this one and the other one where it's underlined.
Okay. On the aforementioned date and time at the above listed location, said defendant did knowingly and unlawfully cultivate and grow cannabis plants. The possessed marijuana plants were located subsequent to the execution of a search warrant upon the defendant's residence, all contrary to the provisions of the statute in such case made and provided for by law.
Now he's saying the marijuana plants were located subsequent to a search warrant, where before they said they found it before they had a search warrant. So either this one here is the truth or the other one is the truth. One of the two is a lie. Here, read this one again.
And under the felony complaint, that was for growing of the plant known as cannabis by unlicensed persons. So keep in mind, person also means a corporation. So I notice the new licenses are given to corporations, even though the Woodstock Times article of August 6th described the Peckhams as a family. So you think, oh, these are people. So those are the principles behind their corporation, which is Etain. That's the name of their corporation. Now this is a felony, is a criminal possession of marijuana in the second degree, contrary to provisions of section 221.25 of the penal law.
Just read this one.
On the aforementioned date and time at the above listed location, said defendant did knowingly and unlawfully possess in excess of 16 ounces of marijuana. The possessed marijuana was located subsequent to the execution of a search warrant upon the defendant's residence. A chemical field test of the possessed substance was positive for the presence of marijuana, THC, all contrary to the provisions of the statute in such case made and provided for by law. But again, we read that law from the 70s that
Wait a
Gottlieb
minute.
put forward and said you could have up to
Right,
16
right.
ounces.
You could have, no, not up to 16 ounces, you could have 25 grams. But without coming in my house, the smell of marijuana, the police officer had no way of knowing. But here again, is the other paper by Dirk Budd, where he was asking for a search warrant, and it's a sworn statement, where he says, Detective Mellon's shoe, stopped by Detective Mellon's shoe, which means he stuffed his shoe in the door, but that wasn't the case actually. He forced his way in. Jay talked to him outside and said, do you have a warrant? If you don't have a warrant, you can't come in. Then when Jay tried to come back in the house, he forced his way in. It wasn't, Jay opened the door, saw it was a cop, and tried to slam the door, and his foot just happened to be in the door. You know what I mean? That's absurd. And then he says, shut the door. Detective Mullen observed marijuana plants inside the residence. Well, that again is
We're
bull.
going to do a roll-in and you're going to see the
Deberman
impossibility of that.
frailed and faked a seizure, which he didn't fake a seizure. Both Michelle and I will testify to that. And then secured him well, and the female, upon searching, now he's saying, upon searching the occupants, the occupants, Deputy Mullen observed what appeared to be approximately 1 pound of marijuana. So he's in the house and he's searching, and he's saying he saw marijuana. So here he's saying that he was in the house and he saw the marijuana. So if he was in the house and saw the marijuana, then he searched. So why did they have to go get a search warrant? They had to go get a search warrant because they're inept. They should have, if he smelt marijuana and wanted to check it out, what he should have did was went and got a search warrant and then come back, served the search warrant, and then searched the house. But here he clearly says that he was in the house and observed the pound of marijuana, which is also a lie because the pound of marijuana was not in plain sight. It was actually 2 pounds of marijuana, and it was back in my bedroom. You know, no, come on, people. Anybody who knows anything about marijuana or people, anybody who's
this
dealing,
police state we're living
knows that you don't leave the drugs out in plain sight. Come on. Marijuana dealers don't leave it on the table for anyone to see. They don't put the plants out so everyone can see it. You know, common sense would tell people this is based on lies and fraud and deception. And to get a warrant after the fact, and then he says, "Oh, we need the warrant to
search.
We need to search the house to find the drugs, and because subsequent to the warrant, we found the marijuana." That's a lie. But you got 2 statements, sworn statements, which contradict each other. So one of these statements, well, I say both of these statements are lies, but even on their face, one has to be a lie.
Can I say something?
Yeah, you can.
What I think is this is a color of law warrant anyway. And what I think is that if you went to a judge and you said, give me a warrant because I smelt marijuana outside this residence, this apartment, this home, the judge would still, to give a warrant by our Constitution, the warrant is permission to invade somebody's privacy because there's harm and there's a threat to the peace of the public, right? The public's peace is being threatened.
Right.
And And therefore, even though the Supreme Court says that the smell of marijuana is probable cause, you still have to have a harmed party.
No, the Supreme
probable
Court...
cause that there's marijuana, and therefore, under certain jurisdictions, you're breaking the law. But if you're saying you want to be under the jurisdiction where the Constitution is honored, where you can face your accuser, where you have a right to a jury trial, where you are not dragged into court when there is no harmed party, this should be dismissed for lack of jurisdiction. That's what I'm saying. Because and also that's why the prosecutor failed to respond to any of the paperwork that was put in. So we're most certainly hoping that
if they really had a case, and if they didn't, we pointed out all these inconsistencies and fraudulent statements when we first went to court. If they had had a case back then, they would have brought us back in 30 days when the judge said, we're going to bring it back in 30 days. Now, to bring it back 4 years later, and on top of this, they charged me $5,000 bail and $500 bail for Jay, because Jay has a pretty clean record, and my records, I've been arrested a few times before, and they have managed to hold...
Falsely arrested.
All right, falsely arrested, but they have managed to hold our bail, and the money that they seized from us, I had $300 and something on me, and I forget how much money Jay had in his pocket, which they kept, and they have held that bail for more than 4 years now. So this is outrageous, and we need people, we would like people to show up in court. If you could show up to support us, all you have to do is just show up to be a witness, If there's people in court when we go into court that are witnessing and the judge knows that there's witnesses there, there's less chance of the judge pulling the old hanky-panky bull that they always pull, or there's less chance of them denying us our right to speak in our own trial, by trying to shut us up. So we would ask people to show up to our case. The
case is September 2nd, that's a Wednesday, at 4 High Street at 6 p.m. That's 6 p.m., I'll put it in an editing.
Okay.
4 High Street, Saugerties, New York.
And now, go ahead.
I just want to say, this is not about marijuana. This is much bigger. This is about privacy, and this is about property. If you want to make up different words, you call property...
And it's about fraudulent actions on the part of the police. They're so busy saying, oh, I broke the law, Jay broke the law, we broke the law. What they're doing every step of the way is worse. Going into a person's house without a warrant is a violation of their rights. Signing a warrant after the fact is a violation of their rights. Signing perjured statements to bring them into court, signing a perjured statement and placing it before a judge is perjury. Now let's read the perjury thing.
In the first degree.
Here, read. Perjury.
In the second degree?
No. Oh, perjury in the second degree is a Class E felony, but...
Okay. S2...
At the least, it's perjury in the second degree. And then read the one perjury in the first degree.
No, I can read perjury in the first degree. Section 210.15, perjury in the first degree. A person is guilty of perjury in the first degree when he swears falsely and when his false statement, A, consists of testimony, and B, is material to the action, proceeding, or matter in which it is made. Perjury in the first degree is a Class D felony.
Right. So Dirk Budd committed perjury in the first degree. Now read this part. Wait, where is it here? No, swears falsely. Read that one.
Okay. Swear falsely, quote, a person swears falsely when he intentionally makes a false statement which he does not believe to be true, A, while giving testimony, or B, under oath in a subscribed written instrument. A false swearing in a subscribed written instrument shall not be deemed complete until the instrument is delivered by its subscriber or by someone acting in his behalf to another person with intent that it be uttered or published as true.
Right. And also, wait, there was another one here.
Perjury in the second degree.
No, I think read this one here.
Okay, oath required by law. An affidavit, deposition, or other subscribed written instrument is one for which an oath is required by law, when, absent an oath or swearing thereto, it does not or would not, according to statute or appropriate regulatory provisions, have legal efficacy in a court of law or before any public or governmental body, agency, or public servant to whom it is or might be submitted.
Now, Dirk Budd, on this it says, on his sworn statement it says, false statements made herein are punishable by a Class A misdemeanor pursuant to 21045 of the New York State Code, right? So he swore and affirmed on this, on that one, and he swore and affirmed on this one here, the same.
But he says he's not under this jurisdiction of what we read. He's saying a Class A misdemeanor if he's lying. A false statement made herein are punishable as Class A misdemeanor pursuant to Section 21045 of the New York State Penal Law.
Yeah, but let me see, there's also a thing here that says if it's turned in...
to a bona fide court, which you're...
Right, to a court.
It's the only thing you're left with is that this is not a bona fide court. Therefore, that's why when you go in, you're going to make a special appearance, right? Not
Right.
a general appearance.
Right.
You're not acknowledging the jurisdiction of a court, which by its own definitions of the accusatory instruments that is using is suspect. Would you say that's the case, Joe? That it's... Oh, Joe's reading something else.
I can't find it here, but there is a statement in this someplace. I don't want to go through the whole thing, where it says, if you make a sworn statement, it's one thing to make a sworn statement. It's more of a violation if you make a sworn statement and then put it before a judge or put it before some legal person. Now you've gone further than just making a sworn statement. And that's why we said it's a Class A felony.
I notice that he crosses off judge and he says justice.
Right.
So this must be Lamb's signature?
Yeah, that's Lamb's signature.
Okay.
Okay, now we've pretty much covered...
So he hasn't put it before a judge. He's crossed out judge.
No, but a
He says
justice
he's a
is,
justice.
it's still, he put it before a legal...
Okay.
Right.
I'm just saying,
Right.
these guys use jive.
It's still the same thing.
Well, in the spirit of the law, for sure, knowingly, willingly, and intentionally, you can see that there's collusion and discrimination against our family. That's what it boils down to.
And,
for the sake of making profit for others.
Right. And we're gonna cut this short now, and we're gonna show some video that was taken right after, well, I think the Michelle thing was taken before we got out of jail.
Yeah. I was in California at this time.
Oh, no, that's
and
not
I
that.
asked
Not,
Christian
not that.
Lorette.
No, I'm talking about the video with Michelle. Where Michelle...
Yeah, that's when I came back. The one with Christian Lorette was done a few days after the arrest.
Yeah, but we're not going to play that because that's just audio.
Fine.
We're going to play...
Anything else you want to say?
2 videos which show that the police officer from the door could never have seen any marijuana in our house. Impossible. And that we have statements from Michelle that corroborates everything that we've been saying. We're going to play that on this video. So
and it was posted on YouTube since 2011.
Right.
I'll put the exact date that it was posted on YouTube, so that's a type of notification to the public.
Right. And it also shows that it was done right at the time of when it happened. And we didn't just make it up or come up with this. We don't have to falsify what we do. We can stand on truth. And that's what I always do when I go into court. I stand on truth. And the police lie, the prosecutors cover for their lies, and the judges cover for their lies. That's why we need people to come to court to witness everything that goes down in this case. So
I guarantee you it's going to be a great opportunity. You will not be disappointed no matter what happens. Obviously, we hope that because it wasn't signed by the clerk, that this is just straightening up their bookkeeping, and now this will open the way for us getting
we went to 42 minutes, so hopefully
getting back our bail.
hopefully we'll run the videos and they'll fit and we'll be able to squeeze them in. Otherwise, we may have to cut off a little bit of this, what we've done already.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye from Joe and Paula.
Okay, good.
He told me that he smelt marijuana and he didn't need a warrant and he was going to search the place anyway and that he didn't need one.
I'm Michelle Rice. I was here at the apartment of Joe and Jay Debermans on February 4th, the early morning of their bust. I'm a neighbor. I was here using the computer. I am mentioned in the application of the warrant. It says Deputy Mullen then pursued Barton. Oh no, wait, I don't have to read that part yet. A female later identified as Michelle A. Rice. That's me. So I was here, and I was secured and taken in the police cars and then to the police station along with Joe Barton and Jay Deberman.
Let's take a look.
What, at this?
No, the door.
Okay. Just to verify who I am and how I'm a witness. All right, I'm doing my little part here in pointing out some misinformation that the police gave in trying to obtaining a warrant and with the information they gave to the press release. Right here, this is the doorway to Joe Barton and Jay Deberman's apartment C2. And you'll see here what it says in the press release. Now, where is it? He's knocked on several apartments. Occupant of apartment 2C, later identified as Jay Deberman, answered the door, and deputies immediately noticed strong odor of marijuana emanating from the apartment. And this is further, right after that, note, deputies observed marijuana plants growing in the residence. Deberman then attempted to force the door closed. All right, now, note how it says here they observed marijuana plants. And they mentioned that before, mentioning that Deberman attempted to force the door closed. That they claim that they observed marijuana plants from when the officer was still in the door. Now, this is the doorway. Okay, he was just in the door. He wasn't even fully in the door because it even says in the application, Deberman attempted to shut the door abruptly, but the door was stopped by Deputy Mullen's shoe.
See, what always bugged me about this is look at how difficult it is to maneuver.
Exactly,
But I'll ask
exactly.
Jay about that later, because
Exactly.
You didn't maneuver anything, right?
Well, no, by the time I had gotten to the door and everything, it was all, everything was kind of like, some of this might have fallen by then. And
Yeah.
But anyway, his foot was in the door. And Jay was still trying to keep him out, even when I had gotten to the door. He was still in the doorway. And he even mentions here, even before that, in the application to the application for the warrant, where is it? Shoe, flail about Yeah, Mullen's shoe. Deputy Mullen then observed marijuana plants in the residence. Deberman then began to flail about in what Deputy Mullen described as a fake seizure. Okay, I'll get to that later. But anyway, the point being, they still claim that before even getting in the door, by both
Why
the words...
don't you go behind me, because I don't want you on camera.
Okay.
What
By
were you
both
saying?
the words in the...
You can see how you can't see
Exactly.
anything from here. That's the point.
Exactly. There's no way, because as it turns out, Joe and Jay, it turns out, were growing their plants inside this closet.
Let's take a look at that. So you'd have to
This
have
closet,
bionic
which
eyes
was
that
closed.
go around the corner.
And in that back room, which you cannot see from here. And the closets were closed, because that night I was here, working on the computer, and other nights that I was here working on the computer, I didn't know they were growing marijuana plants, and they were back here, and I never noticed any marijuana plants growing.
Such a tiny space.
So, like, from the doorway, in which they claim they noticed the marijuana plants before even getting in the door, which, once again, They mentioned right after that, you know, Jay then tried to force the door closed. There's no way they could have seen it.
And marijuana activists would never have pot out.
Exactly.
They all know their rights and stuff. And you
Exactly.
can see this is all food.
Yeah, they didn't
and-
have any growing in the bathroom or in the hallway here or in these shelves.
Now, where's
You know.
this pound supposed to be, Jay?
I didn't get the evidence worksheet yet. They said it was visible in the window.
Months.
But this one was here. But I just want to show. Here is a ruler. From the edge of the door, there is over about a 6.5 inch overlap. And basically, the officer put more than his foot in the door. He had his whole body in the doorway.
In order to...
But even a foot in the door is an entry. And I tried to close the door, and I was talking to the officer. But prior to that, I stepped outside and talked to the officer and closed the door behind me.
Can you sort of show how you did that? He was sort of standing where I was,
Yeah, I was standing here.
and then he came and sort of forced himself on you. God, it must have been icky.
Well, I asked him why he was here. And I asked him what building he was looking for, what apartment number, and who he was looking for. He told me he was looking for B2. And I pointed to the number here and told him, well, this is C2. And I told him he was at the wrong place. And he told me he smelled marijuana and he wanted to search the place. I told him that I asked him if he had a warrant, and he said that he didn't have a warrant. I told him, well, you must have a warrant. You can't search the place without a warrant.
So you had this conversation right here?
Yes,
Was he like
outside
in
the
your
apartment.
face here?
He was standing right about where you are.
Okay. And then the door was closed. And then how did he do that? Oh, you tried to get back in the
Well,
house.
Well, before that, he told me that he smelt marijuana. And he asked me to give him the marijuana then because I wouldn't let him search my apartment. And basically, I told him I didn't have any marijuana. And then he said he wanted to search the place anyway. And then he tried to get around me to open the door. And then I retreated back into the apartment and told him that he couldn't come in. He must have a warrant.
And then
I stood in the door here,
And he did
basically,
this.
and tried to close it and stuff. And
About
he
where was
wouldn't.
his foot?
He was standing right here like this. He wouldn't let me in.
Whoa.
Or he wouldn't let me close the door.
So he's very aggressive.
And he was sticking his nose in the door.
Right. Now,
And he had a foot in the door. And his nose.
so he's like right here?
Yeah.
And-
Go from side to side here, which we're right at the edge of the doorway. You still can't see anything. And now, basically, wait here, you want to take that? I'll hold the ruler. Just so you can show at what point when you enter the house. Are you in the house yet? You're
No.
in the house now?
Slightly, yeah.
You're past the doorway.
Yeah, I got my toes over it.
Okay.
Then
And
you can
about
see
how
stuff.
far? You're about 6 inches in now? Or
Yeah.
7 inches?
Yeah.
How far in the doorway are you?
What do you think? See my
Um,
shoulder here?
You're with the door frame or so?
Yep. Okay. I mean, you don't have to get micro-technical. You can't see anything.
But even if you come in here, now step in the doorway where you're completely in.
Okay, here I'm completely in. Now we're looking down the hall.
And by now you've entered the house
Yeah.
completely, your whole body.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still not much visible.
No. And that's what Michelle said. The pot that was growing here, he couldn't be able to see.
No, that's a 180-degree turn and it sets back
Yeah.
further than the door. There's no possible physical way to see anything in that closet from outside.
And where's the picture of the pound of pot that they said was there?
We didn't get any photographic evidence from them yet.
I see.
I didn't get the evidence worksheet yet.
Okay.
Now I had some marijuana back here. I had some marijuana on this shelf here.
Okay. And here's where it was growing.
And that is Joe's room there, the door to Joe's room. And I had some plants in this room here.
Which is now your meditation room.
Yes, it's now a yoga and meditation room. He told me that he smelt marijuana and he didn't need a warrant and he was going to search the place anyway and that he didn't need one. And that is when I retreated back into the house and I stood in the doorway. Well, I retreated back into the house here and tried and closed it, and he put his foot in the door and I stood blocking the view and argued with him and told him that he can't come in, he doesn't have a warrant, he must have a warrant.
You must have been freaked out when he said he didn't need a warrant.
Yeah, I was. He caused me to have a seizure when he forced an entry.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't close the door and he forced his way in and caused me to have a seizure because I couldn't stop him. And it's...
So did he, and now this time he's like in your face? And then what? Then you had scuffling around. Did Michelle see?
Michelle had heard the struggle at the door, and she had heard that I had stepped outside and closed the door behind me. And when she had heard the struggle at the door, she went and got my father. And then Michelle and my father came to the door to assist me.
So she went to get your dad?
Yes, she did.
Let's take a look at how far his place is. You want to go down and show? Or I'll follow? Okay, so that's...
But he was back in the bedroom, and she went and got him.
So Michelle at this point had gotten up from the computer to go and see, and then she called for Joe to come in?
When he heard me arguing with the officer at the door about him not having a warrant and him not being able to come in, she went and got Joe.
Right.
Holding me when I became conscious, and my hand was still on the door, and then the officer stepped in the door, came in the door, and my father was telling him that he didn't belong in here, and when I became conscious I told my father that he didn't have a warrant and he didn't belong in our house.
Okay, when Michelle called me, she yelled for me, and I came, and Jay was standing like this with the cop at the door, right? And then Jay's knees started to buckle, and I held Jay up like this, right? And the cop was pushed the door to here, and he was here, and I was here, holding Jay up, right? And I said to the cop, "What are you doing in my house? Do you have a warrant?" And he said, "I don't need a warrant." And I said, "You do need a warrant." And Jay came out of he was passing out, and he came out of it and said, "He don't have a warrant." And I said to him, "Get out of my house, you don't have a warrant." And he said to me, "I smell marijuana, you're all under arrest." That was what the cop said to me while I was holding Jay up against this rack. Right? Now he says from his position here, he could see marijuana. Now, there was marijuana growing in this closet, but both of these doors were shut, and I had my back to it. There was no possible way for him to see marijuana in this closet. No possible way. Okay, now, after Jay stepped outside onto the porch, and he was barefoot, and I said to the cop, "Let me get Jay's shoes." I came over here, right there, and grabbed Jay's shoes and handed them to Jay outside. The cop stayed right in the edge of the door, right? Then I had no shoes on, and I said, "I'm going back to get my..." He said, "You're all under arrest," at the door, right? And I got Jay his shoes. Then I said,
in the door at that point.
Then I said,
we were all under arrest.
Right, he said he smelled marijuana, we're all under arrest. Then I gave Jay his shoes. Jay was standing on the porch, and the cop was still in the door. I said, "I'm going back to get my shoes." And I went back. Now this curtain was up. And I walked through the curtain. And I went from here into here, and my shoes were over there in that corner, right?
Okay.
And I went over and picked up my shoes, and the cop came walking in that door.
When you were standing here?
When I was standing here, he came walking in
Where
that,
Jay is.
He came walking in that door,
Okay.
right? Now, he says in his paperwork that there was a pound of marijuana out in the living room. That's a lie. The pound of marijuana was sitting right here. Now, from the door, he couldn't have seen it, and show that curtain. That curtain has always been there. He couldn't have seen it. Now, when he came through here, Paula, when he came through here to see me, it's possible that he noticed the marijuana growing in this room.
Mm-hmm.
But by then he was already in the house and searching without a warrant.
Right. Okay.
There was no marijuana out in this room. Michelle was here at the computer.
That's what she'd come over to use.
She came over to use the computer. Mm-hmm. There was no marijuana out open in this room. Those doors were closed. That had a few small plants in it, and the larger plants, which weren't bigger than this, were in this room.
Yeah.
There's no possible way that cop can say, even though he was illegally in the house, there's no possible way he could have saw marijuana visible. Michelle didn't see it when she came. Many of my other friends have come here and not gone past this curtain, and that door's always been locked. Those doors have always been shut.
You mean here?
The closet doors.
These little tiny.
Got little pots of pie spread out all over the lot, 'cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Well, I got the seed from Mexico. Stick it in some dirt and let it grow. Put it in my garden with my peppers and my peas, and I get all the smoke I need for free. 'Cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Growing marijuana in my yard. We keep it where no one can see, so let's keep this between you and me. But I'm growing marijuana in my yard. 'Cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. I can't tell I'm boss or I'll get fired. I don't grow much, just what I use. I work all day, and when I'm through, I smoke some marijuana from my yard. Now the policeman, he wants to talk to me. He says, how you gonna smoke up all that weed? He says, money's what you're in it for. Don't you know we're in a war? Now I'm gonna haul your ass downtown, please. I said, hey man, what is it to you? How do I infringe on what you do? Well, I beg your pardon if you're offended by my garden, but I just can't grow Prozac in my yard. So I grow my own medicine in my yard. I give some to my neighbor for his heart. Share it with my grandma who keeps it from her son, 'cause we all know that stuff's against the law. Now there's nothing growing in my yard, 'cause the cops took all my land and both my cars. Now I have to buy my pot from a teenager in the parking lot who's growing marijuana in his yard. Oh, anyone can grow it in their yard. Say I can show you how, it ain't hard. Never mind the president, let's overgrow the government and all grow marijuana in our yard. Let's grow some marijuana in our yard.